In 2011, Batman Comics were doing something they had never done before. As most comic fans know, DC launched a company-wide initiative known as the New 52. Every single DC comic was reset to issue number 1. DC wanted to reset the continuity of all its characters and create a blank slate for new readers. And because of this company-wide effort, the continuity of Batman went through a soft reboot. So for the first time ever since 1940, people could go to the comic book shop and pick up a Batman issue number 1. Except this time, instead of it being written by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, it was now being created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. And that Batman run by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo would turn into the legendary Court of the Owls storyline that I'm sure a lot of people watching this video are already familiar with. But it wasn't just Snyder and Capullo writing brand new Batman comics. You had Batman the Dark Knight, Detective Comics, and a whole number of Bat family related books as well. Batwing, Batgirl, Batwoman, etc. But there's one book from that New 52 era that I think does something uniquely special with the Batman mythos. A book that is super simple in its execution. At its core, it's a story about Batman and Robin fighting crime. It doesn't seem like a radical change of pace or tone compared to the Batman comics you might be used to, but when you peel back those layers, you'll find a shockingly vulnerable tale about a father and son who are desperately trying to understand each other. So join me in this video as we take a look at why New 52 Batman and Robin is criminally underrated. Before we talk about why this book is so great, let's go over some of the basics. This is a book called Batman and Robin. But who is Batman and who is Robin? It sounds like a simple question, but in mainline DC continuity, there's at least 4 different Robins, not including Elseworld versions of the character. On top of that, Bruce Wayne is Batman, but he isn't the only person who's ever worn the suit. For example, in 2009, Grant Morrison launched a series called Batman and Robin, where due to the things happening in previous Batman stories, Bruce Wayne was no longer standing in as Batman. Instead, in Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin comic, we got Dick Grayson, the first Robin, and now Nightwing, standing in as Batman in the absence of Bruce. And Robin? Well, Robin in this run is Damian Wayne, the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul. Damian is a character created by Grant Morrison, who is a 10-year-old boy that was raised by Talia al Ghul to become the ultimate weapon. At only 10 years old, Damian is smarter, faster, stronger, and more skilled than almost all adults. But he also has a lot of cockiness and overt confidence in him. Damian has the skills to back up his braggadocious behaviors, but his ego is so big that he often comes across as bratty and entitled. And that's kind of the pitch of Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin. Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian Wayne as Robin. I have a whole YouTube video diving deeper into Grant Morrison's Batman if you're interested in learning more. Point being, this isn't the Batman and Robin comic I want to talk about for this video. The Batman and Robin comic I want to talk about came out 3 years later as part of DC's New 52 relaunch. Of course, I'm talking about Batman and Robin, written by Peter J. Tomasi with art by Patrick Gleason. In November 2011, DC's New 52 relaunch was well underway, and every single Batman title was reset to issue number 1, including Batman and Robin. However, it wasn't just the issue numbers that were reset, it was the entirety of Batman's continuity. DC editorial wanted to give audiences the ability to read Batman comics with a blank slate. Hence, Batman and Robin by Tamasi and Gleason was born, and it's a book that aims to serve both superfans and newbies alike. Whether you've been reading the character for decades or you're a completely new comic book reader, you can pick up this book and enjoy some fun Batman and Robin comics. And that point right there is the first reason why I find this series to be such an incredible story. Resetting the continuity of Batman comics makes it so that the book is not only accessible to new readers, but it's also bold and exciting. The book doesn't have to worry about the long and convoluted tapestry of Batman's past. From the first issue, you get thrown into the action, and it's made clear the purpose of this story isn't to build on something that already exists, it's to build on something new. And as a comic book reader, that's a really refreshing concept. On top of that, the creative team was a match made in heaven. Tamasi and Gleason had already been working on Green Lantern Corps prior, meaning they had a really strong synergistic flow before even starting this run. But what about the actual qualities of this book? Well, From the first issue, we hit the ground running with Batman and Robin suiting up in the Batcave. But instead of gearing up for an action-packed mission, Batman instead decides to take the opportunity to inject a little bit of pathos into the life of Damian Wayne. We watch as the Dark Knight takes Damian to Crime Alley and walks the street in which a young Bruce Wayne, one who would have been similar age to Damian, watched his parents get killed. Batman walks Damian through the traumatic moment that would shape him into the man he is today, explaining to Damian that, quote, "It's not how they died that should be remembered, it's how they lived." It's a beautiful and surprisingly transformative recall for Bruce. This is a man who let trauma define him for almost all of his life, finally opening up to his son, showing Damian his vulnerability, and in a therapeutic way trying to let go of his past in order to embrace his future, the future that will include him and his newfound son. And all Damian can respond to Bruce with is an offhand comment about how dead is dead. I'm glad you're putting this sentimental nonsense behind you. It's a snarky, apathetic, and frustrating response, one that establishes the at-odds relationship Damian has with Bruce. The layers of irony and philosophical contradiction from these scenes are so palpable, you can feel it through the page. On one hand, you have Batman, a character known for suppressing his feelings to the point that he almost always refuses to acknowledge the culpability of his emotional refrain, but he's now finally coming to terms with his trauma in a deeply vulnerable way, only then to be met by a nagging 10-year-old with zero care in the world. But that response doesn't stop Bruce, as he continues to monologue to Damian about remembering the legacy of his parents. During this speech, he folds a sheet of paper and creates a small paper boat that he places into a body of water, and he watches it sail away into the darkness of Gotham's sewers. It's a beautiful gesture that commemorates the legacy of the Wayne family, and it's a sweet and symbolic action that signposts significant progress in Batman's worldview, almost as if Batman is saying the 10-year-old boy that lost his parents all those years ago is ready to move forward, only then for Bruce's very own 10-year-old son to tear down that act, with Damian saying, "You can't just build a boat and hope that darkness magically sails away in it." Despite the significance of this moment, all enthusiasm is lost on Damian. However, that doesn't stop Batman from relishing in the moment, with Batman's response being, "Why not? It's my boat." All of this is then immediately followed up with some beautifully drawn and colored Batman action panels. We see Batman and Robin suit up and take down hordes of goons who are trying to wreak havoc in the city. And those two scenes in tandem capture the essence of what this Batman and Robin story is truly about. It's a heartfelt story about a father and son finding it impossible to see eye to eye with each other when it comes to their emotions. But when they're out in the field taking down bad guys in a spectacularly action-packed way, they have flawless chemistry. You see, as Batman fans, we have decades of stories about Batman overcoming insurmountable odds, using his fists and his wits to take down foes who are seemingly impossible. And that type of action is great. But in this story, Batman's biggest challenge isn't a seemingly unstoppable villain. Rather, his biggest obstacle is finding it in himself to meet eye to eye with his own son. And that dynamic is so refreshing, in my opinion. Granted, Peter J. Tomasi didn't invent this concept. The idea of an emotionally stunted father trying to tame their feral ninja son was established by Morrison in their Batman run and their consequent Batman and Robin run. Funnily enough, prior to New 52, Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason worked on a 3-issue arc as part of that overarching Morrison run. It's really fun. It's about Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian Wayne as Robin taking down this new villain known as the White Knight, and it's a super enjoyable read all around. All of this to say, the relationship between Batman and Robin, and more specifically Bruce Wayne and Damian, wasn't invented by Tomasi. What Tomasi did, however, was take this relationship and build on it in a really big way. In the first half of the run, Tomasi shows us what happens when Batman is forced to confront his past. How much of his troubled life does he need to show to Damian? And when he does show Damian that life, how much is too much? It's an interesting question, and the reaction to that question from Damian is equally as compelling. Children are already entitled enough, but when you have a 10-year-old who is leaps and bounds ahead of people in your age range, you're gonna feel even more entitled. And that's what Damian is, an entitled, stuck-up kid. A kid who wants to know everything and thinks he knows what's best for himself. But as Batman and Robin go closer and more in sync, we see that facade fade away, and we get to learn who Damian is. We see the horrific circumstances he faced as a child, and we understand, in spite of all that, he's still just a little kid who loves animals, a little kid who wants friends, and most importantly, a little kid who just wants the approval of his father. The other thing this run does is answer to the repercussions of other Batman stories, primarily Scott Snyder's Batman. Tomasi takes what Scott Snyder does with Court of the Owls and Death of the Family and injects those ideas into his Batman and Robin run. So if you've read New 52 Batman alongside New 52 Batman and Robin, you'll notice a lot of synergy with the storytelling and more specifically with the big moments. It's a nice touch, in my opinion, that brings the New 52 together, making it feel like this huge operatic event where every single comic was related to each other. And it's really nice because while New 52 Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo is a spectacular story, it doesn't feature a lot of Damian Wayne. Scott Snyder actually addressed this on Twitter back in 2016, saying that Damian was a really compelling and interesting character, but Damian Wayne is 10 and Scott Snyder's real life son is 9. This made it difficult and uncomfortable for Scott Snyder to write a story about a character getting into violent situations when that character was so close in age to his son. And all of this just provides us with another reason why Batman and Robin by Tamasi and Gleason is so crucial. Has so many amazing ideas in his New 52 run, but he wasn't able to put Damian Wayne into that story in a comprehensive way. For example, the Court of the Owls crossover in Tomasi's run, where we get to see Damian battle with a Court of the Owl assassin, is an action-packed thrill ride through and through. And the Death of the Family crossover is a totally twisted and psychologically disturbing tale and fitting for a Joker story. But that's not the only crossovers we have here. There's also the way this comic plays into the ending of Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated. I won't spoil what happens, but the consequences of Batman Incorporated shift the pendulum and alters the trajectory of Tamasi and Gleason's run in a really big way. Going forward, we see a much more serious, dark, and motivated Batman. A Batman who is forced to confront the consequences of his own actions and made to realize that not every issue can be solved with prep time. Sometimes you just fail. All of this storytelling eventually culminates into the finale of the run, which is a pseudo Bat Family and Justice League story, with Batman finding himself standing toe-to-toe with Darkseid on Apocalypse in this epic confrontation. I don't want to spoil the specific plot beats in the run because I think everyone should go in and check it out for themselves, but it's really epic and grandiose and super fun Batman comics. All around, this is a comic book filled to the brim with a plethora of emotionally nuanced themes. But the two biggest ideas explored in this run are very simple. The first being, how can you learn to parent a child that has been absent from you their entire life? And the second being, how do you learn to accept a father who fails to live up to the expectation of what they were supposed to be? They're simple questions with not so simple solutions. Of course, this is still a Batman comic, and we see the Dark Knight face off against a large list of villains, both new and old. And while Tomasi's inventive reimagining of old and new villains alike are expertly crafted, it's Gleason's artwork that brings the book home. Every single action spread had me sitting there with a massive grin on my face. It's not inventive or revolutionary artwork, but it feels very in lieu of what the DC house style was for the New 52 era. And it's genuinely impressive how much detail Gleason is able to pack into every single action scene, and for that reason alone, I love it. In conclusion, Batman and Robin by Tamasi and Gleason is a beautiful story. It's visually beautiful and emotionally beautiful, and if you're willing to give this book a chance, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So hopefully I sold you on checking out this series. In my opinion, it isn't discussed nearly as much as it deserves to be. So do yourself a favor and check it out. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I hope you all enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.